Imagine this. You wake up in the morning, and before your feet even touch the floor, your hand is already on your phone. You tell yourself you'll just check a few messages or watch one video, but half an hour disappears. A few laughs, a few likes, a little hit of pleasure. It feels harmless, right? But here's the uncomfortable question. What if these small pleasures are slowly chaining us? Not with iron shackles we can see, but with invisible ones, made of habits, distractions, and cravings that quietly control our lives. This isn't a new idea. Aldous Huxley, in his famous book Brave New World, warned of a world where people weren't controlled by fear or violence, but by comfort, by endless pleasure, by a drug called soma that kept them happy no matter how meaningless their lives became. And if we look at our world today, social media feeds, endless scrolling, constant notifications, doesn't it feel a little too familiar? Why is it that pleasure feels so good in the moment, but so empty afterwards? Modern psychology gives us some fascinating clues. One important concept is the hedonic treadmill. Imagine running on a treadmill. You move and move, but you never really get anywhere. That's how pleasure works in our lives. No matter how big the win, buying a new phone, driving a new car, eating an amazing meal, we get used to it. The joy fades, and soon we're back to the same baseline of contentment we had before. Then what happens? We crave the next thing, and then the next. It's an endless cycle of chasing a happiness that always seems just out of reach. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who studied the state of flow, explains something deeper. True satisfaction doesn't come from quick pleasures at all. It comes from those moments when you're fully absorbed in something meaningful, whether it's painting, writing, working on a project, or even having a deep conversation. In flow, time disappears. You're not chasing pleasure, you're living it. But most of our modern world isn't designed to put us into flow. Instead, it traps us in addictive cycles. Neuroscience shows us why. Every time we expect something pleasurable, like a message notification or a like on our post, our brain releases dopamine, the chemical that motivates us to repeat behaviors. But here's the catch. Research by neuroscientists such as Robert Sapolsky shows that dopamine spikes more in anticipation than in the actual reward. That's why waiting for a text can feel more exciting than getting it. It's why we refresh feeds without even knowing what we're looking for. Our brains are wired to chase the possibility of reward, not the reward itself. Now think about your own habits. How many times have you caught yourself unlocking your phone without even realizing why? How often do you snack, scroll, or binge? Not because you need to, but because your brain craves that little jolt of anticipation. This isn't weakness, it's biology. But when left unchecked, it turns us into seekers who are never truly satisfied, always chasing, but rarely fulfilled. The chase for pleasure feels harmless at first. After all, what's wrong with enjoying a good show, a tasty snack, or a quick scroll through social media? But here's the uncomfortable truth. Modern science shows us that when pleasure becomes our main compass, it doesn't just waste time. It can quietly damage our mental health, our focus, and even our sense of self. A 2020 study published in the Journal of Affective Disorders found that heavy screen use, especially on social media, is strongly linked with rising levels of anxiety and depression. And this isn't surprising. Think about it. How many times have you opened TikTok or Instagram telling yourself, just 5 minutes, only to look up an hour later feeling more empty than when you started? You didn't just lose time, you lost energy, focus, and maybe even confidence as you compared yourself to curated lives on your screen. This is the hidden cost of modern pleasure. It doesn't just fail to satisfy, it often leaves us worse than before. Psychologists call this the pleasure trap. The more disconnected and unhappy we feel, the more we turn to the very things that caused it in the first place. It's like being thirsty and drinking salt water. For a moment it feels refreshing, but it only makes the thirst stronger. And the systems around us know exactly how this works. Social media platforms, streaming apps, and even food companies have one goal: to keep us hooked. Tech designers like Tristan Harris, a former Google design ethicist, have explained how apps are built using the same principles as slot machines. Every swipe, every refresh, every unpredictable notification is designed to create what psychologists call intermittent variable rewards. That's just a fancy way of saying you don't know when the next dopamine hit will come, so you keep checking again and again. The result? We live in a world where our attention has become the new currency. Every moment we spend scrolling, watching, or clicking isn't just entertainment, it's data being sold. In this attention economy, we are the product. But the real price we pay isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the things we lose without realizing it. The depth of conversations we no longer have because we're distracted. The creativity we don't explore because we're numbed by constant input. The simple joy of being present in a moment, stolen by the urge to record, share, or compare. And here's what makes it even more dangerous. It feels good. Unlike old forms of control, like fear or force, this modern slavery doesn't hurt, it seduces. It convinces us that scrolling is relaxing, that binging is deserved, that instant gratification is harmless. And because it feels good, we rarely question it. But take a step back. Think about the last time you lost an entire evening to a show or to scrolling. Did you wake up the next morning fulfilled or drained? Did that pleasure actually feed your soul, or did it leave you craving more of the same? This is the paradox of modern pleasure. The more we consume, the less satisfied we feel. And the less satisfied we feel, the more we consume. If this cycle feels familiar, don't go anywhere. Because what comes next isn't just theory, it's a perspective from one of history's greatest survivors, Viktor Frankl, that might completely shift the way you see your life. If pleasure alone can leave us empty, then what actually fills us? This is where the wisdom of Viktor Frankl becomes life-changing. Frankl was not just a psychiatrist, he was a survivor of the Holocaust, one of history's darkest chapters. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, he shared something remarkable. Even in the most brutal and dehumanizing conditions, those who found a deeper why, a sense of purpose, were the ones who endured. Happiness could not be chased. Pleasure could not sustain. But purpose? Purpose gave people the strength to keep living, even when everything else was stripped away. Frankl believed that when people lack meaning, they inevitably turn to distractions. They seek comfort in small pleasures because the emptiness inside is too heavy to face. And isn't that exactly what so many of us do today? We fill our days with scrolling, binging, shopping, or chasing status, not because we're truly satisfied, but because silence feels unbearable. Think about your own life. How often do you reach for your phone, not because you want to, but because you don't want to sit with your thoughts? How often do you say, just one more episode, because the quiet after feels uncomfortable? These aren't just habits, they're signs of a deeper hunger. Frankl argued that true fulfillment comes from three sources: creating something of value, whether it's art, work, or contribution, experiencing love and connection, the deep bonds with people who matter, finding growth in suffering, the ability to transform pain into strength. Notice how none of these rely on instant pleasure. They demand something deeper: effort, courage, vulnerability. And yet the rewards they give last far longer than the dopamine hit from a notification. This is where psychology meets practicality. If the hedonic treadmill keeps us chasing pleasures that fade, then meaning is the path that keeps us grounded. A purpose-driven life doesn't need constant novelty because it has direction. Imagine sailing a ship. Pleasure is like chasing random waves, but meaning is like following a compass. One leaves you drifting, the other takes you somewhere. But here's the problem. Our culture pushes us toward distraction, not direction. We're told that happiness is a product to be bought, that success is measured by likes, wealth, or status, that if we feel empty, we just need more entertainment, more comfort, more something. And so, millions of people spend their lives chasing external pleasures while ignoring the internal void. Frankl warned about this void. He called it the existential vacuum, the state of feeling empty, restless, and without direction. When people don't have meaning, they fill the vacuum with consumption, with pleasure, with distractions. And the more they chase, the emptier they feel. So ask yourself honestly, are you living with purpose? Or are you letting the pursuit of pleasure dictate your choices? This isn't a philosophical question for professors. It's practical. It shows up in the smallest decisions of your day. Do you spend an extra hour binging a show, or do you spend that hour connecting with someone you love? Do you scroll aimlessly, or do you use that time to invest in a skill that will shape your future? Do you avoid discomfort at all costs, or do you embrace it as the path to growth? Every small decision builds into the framework of your life. And if we're not careful, those decisions will build a life that looks comfortable on the surface, but feels empty underneath. This is why thinkers like Frankl remind us that life isn't about chasing happiness, it's about finding meaning. And as we'll see in the next part, some of history's greatest philosophers and psychologists warned us that without meaning, entire societies, not just individuals, can fall into distraction, control, and despair. Viktor Frankl showed us that meaning is the antidote to emptiness. But he wasn't alone. Across history, some of the greatest thinkers warned us of what happens when people give up meaning for comfort. And their voices sound eerily relevant today. Let's start with Cal Newport, author of Deep Work. Newport argues that our modern obsession with shallow distractions, scrolling, clicking, endless multitasking, is destroying our ability to focus deeply. And without deep focus, we can't master anything meaningful. Think about it. How many times do you sit down to do something important, only to check your phone every few minutes? Those little interruptions don't just waste time, they erode your ability to enter a state of flow. Over time, we trade mastery for mindless stimulation. The philosopher Erich Fromm went even further. In his book To Have or to Be, he warned that modern society traps us in a mode of existence built on possessions. We define ourselves by what we have, not who we are. And when life becomes about consuming rather than becoming, we lose touch with authentic joy. Isn't that the exact trap consumer culture sets for us? New gadgets, new trends, new lifestyles, sold to us as happiness, but leaving us emptier than before. Then there's Alexis de Tocqueville, who coined the term soft tyranny. He predicted that one day people would willingly surrender freedom for comfort, not because they were forced to, but because it felt easier. That's the scariest kind of control, the one that feels good. Today, our smart devices think for us, our apps deliver instant gratification, and our culture glorifies convenience above all else. It feels like progress, but slowly, without realizing it, we surrender our independence to systems designed to keep us passive. The Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard described this as the despair of the aesthetic life, a life lived only for pleasure, beauty, and comfort, without higher ideals or responsibility. He warned that such a life may look appealing on the surface, but leads to despair because it lacks depth. In today's world, that despair looks like people chasing trends, buying lifestyles, and endlessly seeking validation online. Yet quietly asking themselves, why do I still feel so empty? And finally, Carl Jung, the great psychologist, gave us perhaps the most piercing insight. He said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Isn't that exactly what distraction has become for us? A way to avoid silence, a way to avoid the hard questions, a way to avoid confronting who we really are? When you put all these voices together, a chilling pattern emerges. Fromm warned us of consumerism, Newport warned us of shallow work, Tocqueville warned us of comfort disguised as freedom, Kierkegaard warned us of despair and pleasure, and Jung warned us of our refusal to face ourselves. Different times, different contexts, but the same message. A life built only on pleasure is not freedom, it's enslavement. And here's the scary part. It's not just individuals who fall into this trap. Entire societies can drift into it. When most people choose distraction over discipline, comfort over courage, and consumption over creation, the culture itself begins to decay. So the question is, if so many thinkers warned us, why do we keep falling for it? And more importantly, how do we break free? That's where we turn next, toward purpose, discipline, and the practices that can help us reclaim our freedom. At this point, you might be wondering, if pleasure is so addictive, if culture constantly pushes us toward distraction, and if even our brains are wired to crave dopamine, how can we possibly escape? Is it even possible to live free in a world built on keeping us hooked? The answer is yes, but the path is not easy, and that's exactly why it matters. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." This is more than just a quote, it's a blueprint for life. When we anchor ourselves to a deeper why, the pull of shallow pleasures weakens. Think about it. The person training for a marathon doesn't give up because the run is uncomfortable. Their why carries them forward. The parent working 2 jobs for their children doesn't collapse under stress. Their why sustains them. The same is true for us. If we don't have a purpose, every small discomfort feels unbearable. But with purpose, discomfort becomes fuel. That's where discipline enters the picture. Former Navy SEAL and leadership coach Jocko Willink puts it bluntly: discipline equals freedom. At first, it sounds like a paradox. How can rules and routines equal freedom? But think about it. When you discipline yourself to wake up early, you create the freedom to use your mornings with intention. When you discipline yourself to say no to distractions, you create the freedom to focus deeply on what matters. Discipline doesn't cage us. It breaks the cages we've built for ourselves. So how do we start breaking free in practical terms? Not with grand declarations, but with small daily choices. Turn off unnecessary notifications. Every ping is a leash pulling your attention away. Cut the leash. Embrace discomfort. Instead of always choosing the easy path, try something hard every day. Exercise when you don't feel like it. Read when it's easier to scroll. Sit in silence instead of filling every gap with noise. Growth begins where comfort ends. Choose creation over consumption. Write, paint, build, cook. Whatever it is, create something. Even small acts of creation shift you from passive consumer to active participant in life. Invest in relationships. Time spent with people you love nourishes you in ways no screen ever will. Protect your focus. Block time for deep work. Even one focused hour a day on something meaningful can transform your life over time. At first, these changes will feel uncomfortable. You'll want to pick up the phone. You'll want to choose the easy path. And you will fail sometimes. That's okay. Freedom isn't about perfection, it's about direction. Every time you resist, even for a moment, you reclaim a piece of your life from the systems that profit from your distraction. And here's the truth nobody tells us. These small choices are acts of rebellion. In a world designed to keep you scrolling, every moment of focus is revolutionary. In a culture that sells you comfort, every act of discipline is an act of freedom. So ask yourself, what's one chain you can break today? Maybe it's turning your phone off for an hour. Maybe it's saying no to mindless entertainment and yes to learning. Maybe it's finally sitting with your own thoughts instead of running from them. Each step may feel small, but together they can reshape your entire life. Because at the end of the day, pleasure isn't the enemy, but when it becomes the master, it enslaves us. To live free, we must remember this. True joy doesn't come from indulgence, it comes from purpose, from discipline, and from living with intention. And that's exactly what we'll confront in the final section. We've taken a long journey together through Huxley's warnings, psychology's explanations, and the voices of philosophers who saw the dangers long before our time. But all of it boils down to something very simple. The pursuit of pleasure, when unchecked, does not give us freedom. It quietly takes it away. Think back to how we began, waking up, phone in hand, scrolling before the day even starts. It seems harmless, but Huxley was right. Chains don't have to be made of iron. They can be made of comforts, cravings, and habits. Chains that feel so soft we hardly notice them tightening. The truth is, modern pleasure has become a form of control, not forced upon us with violence, but offered to us with a smile. One more video, one more episode, one more purchase. The systems around us profit not when we are free, but when we are hooked. We don't live in an age of physical slavery, but in an attention economy where our time and focus are bought and sold. And while that sounds dramatic, it plays out in the smallest details of our lives. How often we refresh, how long we binge, how quickly we avoid silence. But here's the good news. If these chains are invisible, they can also be broken. And the key is not to reject pleasure completely, but to put it back in its rightful place. Pleasure is meant to serve us, not rule us. Thinkers like Viktor Frankl, Nietzsche, Kierkegaard, and Jung all pointed us toward the same truth. Life is not meant to be lived on the surface. True freedom comes when we face ourselves honestly, choose discipline over indulgence, and anchor our lives to meaning. Every small act of resistance, turning off notifications, choosing a book over endless scrolling, calling a loved one instead of mindlessly watching another show, isn't just a habit shift, it's a declaration of freedom. Remember this, the pleasures you chase will fade, but the purpose you pursue will shape who you become. The comfort of today may satisfy for an hour, but the discipline you build will guide you for a lifetime. And in the end, the question is not whether pleasure feels good, it's whether it helps you live the life you were meant to live. So ask yourself right now, are you free? Or are you comfortable in chains you can't see? This isn't meant to scare you, it's meant to awaken you. Because freedom is not something given, it's something reclaimed, choice by choice, moment by moment. And the beautiful thing is, you can start today. The first time you resist checking your phone, you've taken a step toward freedom. The first time you sit with silence instead of running from it, you've taken a step toward self-discovery. The first time you choose purpose over distraction, you've chosen to live intentionally. It won't always feel easy. In fact, sometimes it will feel like swimming upstream while everyone else floats along the river of convenience. But remember what Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." Once you know your why, the current can't carry you away. And maybe that's the deeper challenge of our time, not to escape pleasure completely, but to rise above it, to master it, to use it without being used by it. To live, as Jocko Willink reminds us, with the discipline that unlocks true freedom. If this reflection stirred something in you, don't let it fade the moment you close this video. Consider subscribing, not just for more content, but to stay on this journey of psychology, philosophy, and mindset. A journey toward living with intention. And I want to hear from you. Share in the comments what's one pleasure you've noticed quietly taking control of your life. For some, it might be scrolling, for others, shopping. For some, maybe it's the comfort of avoiding discomfort. Whatever it is, your story might be the exact thing someone else needs to hear to break their own chain. Because this isn't just about you or me, it's about all of us. Together, we can build a space where freedom isn't just an idea, but a lived reality. So as we close, remember this. The chains may be invisible, but they are not unbreakable. The path may be steep, but it leads to greatness. And the life you were meant to live is waiting on the other side of comfort. The choice, as always, is yours.